Her passport was burned at the airport, but they didn't know who she really was. It was supposed to be just another trip through the airport. A line of passengers shuffled forward, the usual mix of sighs, impatience, and rustling luggage. But then, suddenly, something happened that silenced the crowd. At the front of the line, a young black woman held out her passport with a calm smile. She had waited patiently like everyone else, confident that nothing could go wrong. But the gate agent's face twisted, not with professionalism, but with arrogance. The agent glanced at the passport, sneered, and made a choice that would shock everyone watching. Without warning, the agent lifted the document, held it up high in full view, and tore it apart with fire in their lighter. The sharp flame licked at the paper, curling its edges until it turned to ash. Gasps erupted from the passengers around her. Some pulled out their phones. Others whispered in disbelief. But the gate agent only smirked as if it were some kind of victory. "Not valid," the agent spat coldly. "You're not going anywhere." The young woman's hands trembled, not with fear, but with controlled anger. Because deep down, she knew something the agent didn't. This wasn't just a passport. This wasn't just another passenger being denied entry. And this certainly wasn't just a moment of casual cruelty. What no one in that terminal realized was that the woman standing there humiliated was not just any traveler. She was the chief inspector of the Federal Aviation Administration, the highest authority overseeing the very rules and safety of aviation itself. The same system the gate agent worked under, she owned. And in that single humiliating act, in front of dozens of witnesses, the gate agent had not just broken a passport. They had lit a match to their own career, their company's reputation, and perhaps even the fragile illusion that airports are places of order and fairness. The woman's eyes narrowed as the ashes fell from the gate agent's hands. The question now was simple. What happens when the powerless suddenly reveals they hold the ultimate power? Long before that humiliating moment at the gate, her life had already been a journey filled with turbulence. Her name was Alicia Carter, a woman who had fought her way up in an industry where people like her were rarely seen in positions of power. Growing up in a small southern town, Alicia had always been fascinated by airplanes. While other kids drew flowers or houses, she sketched detailed outlines of jets soaring above clouds. Her father, a mechanic who worked endless shifts at a local hangar, used to bring her broken airplane manuals. Most kids would toss them aside. Alicia devoured them like storybooks. She didn't just dream of flying, she dreamed of making the skies safer. But dreams don't come easy when the world tells you no. Teachers told her aviation wasn't for girls. Guidance counselors suggested nursing or teaching instead. And when she applied for internships at aviation companies, rejection letters piled up, often with polite words that thinly masked their bias. Still, she pressed on. Years later, through grit and sheer brilliance, Alicia became one of the youngest safety inspectors at the Federal Aviation Administration. Her reports were known for being meticulous, her audits unshakable, while colleagues twice her age leaned on her expertise. Whispers followed her through hallways. A black woman can't possibly handle this responsibility. She ignored the noise and kept climbing, and climb she did. By her early 30s, Alicia wasn't just an inspector. She was the chief FAA inspector, the final word on safety violations, certifications, and regulations across the entire country. Every airline, every airport answered to her office. It was power she never flaunted, but power nonetheless. Yet outside her crisp office walls, bias didn't disappear. On the streets, at stores, in restaurants, and especially in airports, she was still seen first as a black woman, not as the authority she carried. That morning at the airport was no different. Alicia arrived quietly, dressed not in her usual uniform of authority, but in simple travel clothes. Jeans, blazer, neatly tied hair. She was on her way to a major international conference, where she was scheduled to deliver the keynote on aviation safety. Dozens of CEOs, executives, and regulators would be waiting for her. But as she rolled her suitcase into the bustling terminal, she noticed the subtle differences in how people looked at her. Security officers' eyes lingered on her bag longer than others. Travelers shifted in line when she stood too close. The unspoken weight of judgment pressed. Down, something she had carried her whole life. Still, she held her head high. Years of discipline taught her never to flinch under scrutiny. She presented her ticket, stepped into line, and approached the gate like any ordinary passenger. The crowd at the gate was restless. Families juggling strollers, business travelers tapping at laptops, elderly passengers nervously clutching their boarding passes. The gate agent stood at the front, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes, the kind that scanned people not just for documents, but for perceived worth. When Alicia handed over her passport, she felt it instantly, the pause. The way his gaze hardened, not on the document, but on her skin, her face, her very existence. He smirked slightly as though daring her to challenge him. Passengers shifted, watching. Some leaned closer, sensing trouble. Alicia remained calm. She had dealt with small indignities before. Maybe this would be no different. But in that moment, the gate agent decided otherwise. His fingers curled around her passport. His lips twisted. And then, in an act so reckless, so arrogant, it would leave the entire terminal stunned. He raised the passport high and struck. A flame. The setup was complete. Alicia's lifetime of resilience and quiet strength had led her here. To a public stage she never asked for. Now she was about to show the world what happens when hidden power collides with open prejudice. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The flames danced, the passport shriveled, and ash fluttered to the polished floor. Passengers gasped, their phones raised higher. Alicia stood still, her fists tightening at her sides, her breath even and measured. The gate agent, proud of his performance, dusted his hands as if he had just disposed of garbage. "Not valid," he said again, louder this time so the crowd could hear. His voice carried smugness, like a teacher scolding a child. "Step aside. You're not flying today." The line behind her began to buzz. A mother whispered to her son, covering his eyes. A businessman muttered, That's insane." Others just stared, caught between disbelief and fear. After all, in airports, authority figures rarely get challenged. Alicia locked eyes with the agent. Her voice, calm but edged with steel, broke the tension. "On what grounds?" The man smirked. "Because I said so." "You think you can fool us with fake documents?" "Not here." His words dripped with accusation, designed to humiliate. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. No one stepped forward to defend her yet. Alicia felt the weight of her life pressing down on her shoulders. She had endured years of casual dismissals, backhanded comments, and obstacles no one else had to face. But this was different. This was public degradation, a spectacle meant to strip her of dignity. One passenger, a young woman, whispered too loudly, "Why would he burn it? That's illegal, isn't it?" Another man filmed from the corner, whispering into his phone, "This is going viral." But Alicia did not flinch. If anything, the humiliation sharpened her composure. Inside her, the storm was gathering. She could have exploded in rage, but she knew better. Power didn't scream, it waited. The gate agent leaned forward, voice dropping to a sneer. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Don't have a real passport to show?" His tone carried centuries of prejudice, of voices that once told her ancestors they weren't worthy of space, of education, of freedom. The crowd shifted again, uneasy. Some passengers exchanged looks, clearly uncomfortable with what they had just witnessed. Yet no one dared intervene. The silence was louder than the insults. Then, as if to twist the knife further, the gate agent motioned to security. Two uniformed guards approached, their posture stiff, their eyes locked on Alicia as if she were the threat. The agent raised his chin triumphantly. "Escort her out. She's not boarding this flight." The moment crackled with tension. Alicia exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She could feel the rage rising, but she also knew the power she held in her silence. If she revealed her identity now, the effect would be monumental. But timing mattered. Passengers began murmuring more loudly now. "This is wrong. She didn't even do anything." A man in a suit shook his head. "They can't just burn someone's passport." And yet, the gate agent stood tall, basking in the power of his decision. His arrogance blinded him to the reality that every word, every action, was being recorded, watched, and judged not only by the crowd, but by the very system that would later decide his fate. Alicia's heart pounded. not with fear, but with the weight of decision. Should she reveal herself here in front of all and end this charade instantly? Or should she let the injustice play out further, exposing not just one man, but the entire pattern of prejudice that had haunted people like her for generations? She looked at the passengers. Their faces told her everything: anger, discomfort, silent solidarity. They were waiting for her to break, to fight, to shout. But Alicia was no ordinary passenger. She raised her chin, straightened her blazer, and in a voice calm enough to silence the room, she said, "I'll go. But remember this moment, every second of it." Security stepped forward, unsure, almost hesitant. The gate agent waved them on, desperate to finish his victory. But as Alicia turned toward the exit, the crowd's murmurs turned to outrage. Someone shouted, "That's not right!" Another voice, "You can't just burn government documents." The energy shifted. What had started as humiliation was now transforming into a public reckoning. Phones recorded. Social media posts began uploading. Whispers of lawsuits and consequences floated in the air, and Alicia walked away with quiet steps, knowing the climax was coming. Because soon, very soon, everyone in that airport, especially the gate agent, would learn exactly who she was. The airport buzzed like a beehive struck by a stone. Whispers grew into murmurs, murmurs into shouts. Videos spread across the terminal like wildfire, screens lighting up with the burning passport. Alicia's heels clicked against the polished floor as security flanked her, but their grip was loose, hesitant. Even they sensed the scene wasn't right. Their eyes darted to the crowd, to the phones recording every step. Behind them, the gate agent stood smug, folding his arms like a king who had just passed judgment. He basked in the attention, convinced of his victory. His voice boomed one last time across the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when you try to cheat the system. Fake passports, fake identities, no tolerance here." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some passengers glared in disgust, not at Alicia, but at him. A woman clutched her daughter's hand tighter, whispering, "He has no idea what he's done." Alicia stopped walking. Slowly, deliberately, she turned back toward the gate. Her eyes locked on the agent. Her silence cut sharper than any words, forcing the room to hold its breath. Then she reached into her blazer pocket. Not rushed, not frantic, calm, controlled. She pulled out a sleek, leather-bound case, black, stamped with the golden seal of the Federal Aviation Administration. The crowd leaned in. The security guards froze. She flipped it open, her voice steady, commanding, and carrying through the terminal like a gavel striking. "My name is Alicia Reynolds, Chief Inspector for the Federal Aviation Administration." A hush fell. The agent's smirk slipped, his face draining of color. Alicia continued, her words slicing through the silence. "I oversee compliance and safety standards for every single U.S. airline, including this one. And you," she pointed, unwavering, "just destroyed a federal document in front of witnesses. You not only violated civil rights, you committed a federal crime." The crowd erupted. Gasps, shouts, and phones tilted closer. "Chief Inspector?" someone whispered. "Oh my God." The security guards stepped back instantly, their posture shifting from authority to apology. One of them stammered, "Ma'am, we didn't know." Alicia's gaze never wavered from the agent, whose arrogance had evaporated into panic. His hands twitched at his sides, his mouth opening and closing without words. "You thought I was powerless," Alicia said, her voice low but carrying weight. "You thought burning my passport would strip away my dignity. Instead, you've stripped away your own career." Her words landed like thunder. Cameras captured his paling face, the sweat forming on his brow. Passengers began to clap. Not politely, but fiercely. Applause that grew louder, rolling through the terminal like a wave. Some cheered, others chanted. The energy had flipped. What had started as humiliation was now triumph. The gate agent tried to speak, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean, it was just procedure." "Procedure?" Alicia cut him off. "Show me the section in any airline policy that authorizes the destruction of a U.S. passport. Show me where racism is written into your training. You can't because it doesn't exist. What you did today wasn't procedure. It was prejudice." The agent stumbled back, shrinking as the crowd recorded his downfall. Alicia turned, addressing the passengers, her presence commanding. This isn't just about me. It's about every traveler who has ever been told they don't belong. About every passenger humiliated instead of helped. Today you saw it. And today it ends. Her words ignited the crowd, their claps now thunderous. Even the airline staff at nearby counters stopped working, frozen by the spectacle unfolding before them. The gate agent tried to slip away, but security, now alert, blocked his path. One officer muttered, "Sir, you need to come with us." Panic flashed in his eyes. His arrogance had crumbled into fear. The very authority he abused had turned against him, and Alicia, standing tall amidst the roar of applause, felt the storm inside her settle. She had faced the fire and walked through unburned, her dignity intact, her power undeniable. The terminal belonged to her now, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. And the world watching on countless screens would remember the day a gate agent burned a passport, thinking he'd erased a woman's worth, only to discover he'd lit the flame that revealed her true power. The clapping still echoed through the terminal, but Alicia wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Her jaw remained steady, her eyes scanning the stunned faces before her. She knew moments like this weren't just about one woman standing up. They were about what came after. The gate agent, pale and trembling, was escorted away by airport police. His arrogance had collapsed into pleading whispers, but no one was listening anymore. His words dissolved into the noise of 100 cameras still filming, still streaming, still spreading the truth. The crowd hadn't just witnessed an injustice. They had watched its unraveling in real time. Alicia took a deep breath, steadying herself. She hadn't come here today to make headlines. She had come for a simple flight, another trip to another inspection site. But fate had forced her hand, pushing her into a spotlight she hadn't sought. And now, whether she wanted it or not, she had become the story. As she moved toward the nearest podium, passengers instinctively created space for her. Their eyes followed her not with pity, but with respect. She could feel the shift moments ago. She had been dismissed as just another passenger. Now, she stood recognized for what she truly was, authority, resilience, and dignity personified. Alicia placed her case on the podium, her fingers brushing over the FAA seal. She looked up, speaking clearly, her voice carrying across the vast hall. Today I was treated as though my identity, my worth, and my right to travel could be erased with fire. But let me be absolutely clear. No one, no agent, no company, no institution has the power to burn away who we are. Her words were steady, but each syllable struck like a hammer. The crowd, still buzzing, fell into silence, drawn to the gravity of her message. She continued, her voice softening. This isn't just about me. I hold a title that protects me from being ignored. But what about those who don't? What about the countless travelers who face this same humiliation without a badge or a title to defend them? How many voices have gone unheard, stories untold? Because people feared no one would believe them? A murmur of agreement rippled through the passengers. Heads nodded. Eyes glistened. Alicia's gaze swept the room. This incident will not be buried. It will not be dismissed as a misunderstanding. It will be reported, documented, and investigated at the highest level. And I promise you, change will follow. For a moment, the crowd was silent. Then the applause erupted again. This time not out of shock or spectacle, but out of solidarity. His time not out of shock or spectacle, but out of solidarity. Strangers, black, white, young, old, clapped together, their voices rising in chants of support. But Alicia knew applause wasn't enough. The real work waited outside these walls. Hours later, as the terminal calmed and flights resumed, Alicia sat in a quiet corner with her replacement passport secured. Through emergency clearance, news alerts buzzed across her phone. The story had already gone viral. Gate agent burns passenger's passport. Discover she's FAA chief. Clips from passengers. Phones dominated social media feeds, sparking outrage across the country. She scrolled through the comments. Some were angry, some heartbroken, some inspired. But one caught her attention. If this can happen to the FAA chief inspector, what chance do the rest of us have? We need accountability. The words weighed heavy on her. She realized that her position gave her a rare platform, a chance to amplify not just her own voice, but the voices of millions who endured silent discrimination every day. And so, when reporters crowded around her at the exit, microphones outstretched, Alicia didn't talk about personal revenge or career pride. She talked about accountability, about dignity, about the need for systemic change that went beyond punishing one man. She declared that the FAA would launch an independent review of airline staff, training and conduct policies nationwide, not as a symbolic gesture, but as a binding reform. Her words made headlines the next morning. News anchors debated the implications. Passengers demanded better protections, and the airline scrambled into damage control. The gate agent's career ended overnight, but the conversation Alicia had sparked was only beginning. In the weeks that followed, Alicia returned to her work, but something had shifted inside her. She had always inspected planes, terminals, and safety records. Now she inspected something larger, the culture of accountability itself. Airports across the nation adopted stricter anti-discrimination protocols. Airlines retrained their staff, and for once, change wasn't just a line in a press release, it was visible. Travelers noticed. Passengers felt it. Employees talked about it, but the greatest impact wasn't in the policies. It was in the way people looked at her story. For young black travelers who had been profiled, dismissed, or humiliated, Alicia became proof that silence wasn't the only option. For others who had never thought about racism in the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors of airports, the story became a wake-up call. And Alicia? She carried the memory of that moment with her. Not the shame of her passport burning, but the power of what followed. She had walked into the airport as just another traveler. She left as a symbol of resilience, and though she never sought the role, she knew it was hers to carry, to remind the world that injustice, no matter how small it seems in the moment, leaves marks far deeper than ashes on the floor. So the question lingered, hanging in the air long after the headlines faded, long after the applause quieted. If one woman's passport could be burned so easily, how many more lives are being burned in silence? And what will we do? What will you do the next time you see the fire start?